All India Institute of Medical. Today we have with us a highly esteemed panel of experts who will enlighten us with thoughts and on yoga and mental health under the theme of health, wellness, and for the. While most of us are quite familiar with the benefits of yoga on our physical health, it's worthwhile to also what we achieve. So, without further delay, I would like to start this session with the well-known yoga. Yoga is restraining the chit or mind from going through fluctuations. Before we start the discussion, I would like to accept the from the honorable chairpersons, moderators, and very eminent panelists for this panel discussion. I would like to extend a warm welcome and cordially invite our chair. First of all, we have with us Professor M. Director AIIMS Delhi, who would be accompanied by Pranjal from MBBS. Professor M. Srinivas has an illustrious career experience, various positions, the academic administration. He joined the AIIMS Delhi in 1994 and became Professor of Pediatric Surgery in 2007. His administrative experience include development of new medical colleges under the Employee Health Insurance Corporation and has contributed to the initiation of more than 10 new medical colleges and started various postgraduate and super specialty courses. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Next, I would like to invite on stage Professor Dr. Ashok Puranik, Executive Director, AIIMS Guwahati, who would be accompanied by Arpita from MBBS Batch 21. Professor Puranik is an internationally recognized trauma surgeon and surgical intensivist. He has completed his fellowship in trauma from renowned Alfred Hospital in Melbourne, Australia. He has served in the Indian Army for more than 3 decades, where he was involved in the field as well as peace tenures across the country and abroad, including tenures in Nagaland, Kargil, counter-insurgency operations, and in Sri Lanka. He also served as the head of surgery department at Command Hospital, Southern Command, and Armed Force Medical Colleges, Pune. Notably, Professor Puranik has also served as an army surgeon in the longest traveling ambulance train, Operation Dhanvantri, an effort that made into the Guinness Book of World Records. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Moving further, I would like to cordially invite first moderator for the panel, Ms. Ruchita Mishra, accompanied by Sambhav from MBBS Batch 21. Ms. Ruchita Mishra is an MBA graduate with triple gold medal from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, IIFT, New Delhi. She has authored many best-selling fiction books. Currently, she is serving as a business executive in London, providing sports and gaming companies with technological solutions. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Now, I welcome on stage our next moderator, Dr. Mayank Mishra, who would be accompanied by Akash from MBBS Batch 21. Dr. Mayank is a pulmonologist with over 15 years of experience. He is currently serving as additional professor in the Department of Pulmonary Medicine, AIIMS Rishikesh. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Now, I would like to extend a warm welcome and cordially invite our panelists for the discussion. First of all, I would like to call on stage Dr. Charan Teja Koganti, accompanied by Princey from BSc Nursing 21. Dr. Charan is renowned neuropsychiatrist from Hyderabad with over 10 years of experience in the field of neuropsychiatry. He has been working as a consultant at AIIMS Hospital, Kondapur, and as associate professor at VRK Institute of Medical Sciences. He is part of multiple research projects in the field of neurological and psychological brain health. In addition, He is proactively teaching stress management strategies to the employees of many multinational corporations. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Next on the panel, we have Ms. Shraddha Jain, who will be, who will be accompanied by Pratibha from MBBS Batch 22. Ms. Shraddha holds a graduation in fashion communication in the from National Institute of Fashion Technology, New Delhi, and is now a yoga teacher and a holistic health coach. She is certified yoga instructor who specializes in pre and postnatal yoga and is actively spreading awareness about yoga and its symbiosis with the mental health. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Next, I am privileged to invite on stage Ms. Heidi Soka, accompanied by Prerna from BSc Nursing Batch 21. Originally from Finland, Ms. Heidi has spent several years in India practicing and studying yoga and spirituality and learning a lifestyle of service. She has been teaching holistic health and yoga for past 15 years. She is also the lead yoga teacher at Bhakti Yoga Rishikesh. Her professional path has been in the world of skiing, wellness, and yoga, instructing, teaching, coaching, and motivating people in the spirit of giving and sharing. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Next, we have with us Dr. Bhavneet Bharti, accompanied by Dhwani from MBBS Batch 21. Dr. Bhavneet is a professor of pediatric health education at PGIMER Chandigarh and the head of social pediatrics department. She completed her MD Pediatrics from PGIMER and DNB Pediatrics in maternal and child health and in health and hospital administration. She is currently serving as the Director Principal at AIIMS Mohali. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Next on the panel, we have Indian Foreign Service Officer Ms. Sweta Bansal, accompanied by Tripti from BSc Nursing Batch 20. Ms. Sweta had been a corporate lawyer for 11 years before she plunged into the Indian Foreign Services in 2013. Her legal and policy background equip her to address issues linked to technology, national security, and corporate governance. She has a rich experience in the international relations, particularly at the Pakistan desk. Currently, she is working as an Indian Foreign Service officer in the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Now, please welcome our next panelist, Shri Hare Krishna Das, accompanied by Sangeeta from MBBS Batch 21. Hare Krishna Das is the lead philosophy teacher at Bhakti Yoga Rishikesh. He was drawn to the chanting of mantras, teaching of Bhagavad Gita and ISKCON at an early age of 16. He is professionally qualified as a company secretary and a corporate lawyer, but after working for a few years in the corporate world, he decided to take up monkhood and utilize his skills for spiritual purposes. Thank you, sir, for joining us. May we have a big round of applause for all the esteemed guests gracing the stage. Now, I would like to inform the audience that any question you may have during the panel discussion will be addressed in the last. Volunteers will be providing paper sheets. Kindly mention your name, your question, and the name of panelists to whom you would like to address the question to. Without further delay, let us start the event, passing on the stage to moderators Ms. Ruchita Mishra and Dr. Mayank Mishra. Thank you.
A very warm welcome and a bright morning to all of you. It is really a great privilege as well as I feel immensely pleasant to be among such esteemed chairpersons and panelists in the second panel discussion of the series of four panels which have been planned for this Y20 consultation. So without any further delay, I would like to begin the discussion because I feel the audience, just like us, is quite excited and looking forward to brilliant responses from very pertinent questions related to the youth as far as this panel discussion is concerned. So the first question and the first panelist to which my question is addressed to is Dr. Charan. And Dr. Charan, I would like to have your opinion and comments uh, on the fact that with competition rising in every field these days, how would you advise today's youth to maintain mental balance so that they can improve their focus and give their best to all of what they look forward to?
Good morning to everybody. Thank you for the question. So firstly, we should understand what competition means. Competition is actually very healthy. It keeps us motivated. It helps us reach our goals. But when it becomes about other people and not you, that is toxic competition. When you are competing against somebody and your entire focus becomes about that particular person or that particular group or that particular position, and it's not about your growth or your uh, your progression anymore, that is toxic. Firstly, I think since childhood, we need to teach children about what competition means, what is a healthy competition, what is toxic competition, what is definition of failure, what is definition of success. Because I'm sure most of us can agree to this. We all grew up being compared to somebody as an example or as somebody receiving an example as someone. It can be your cousin, it can be your sibling, it can be your neighbor, it can be somebody on the TV, absolutely that you don't know. Right? Parents do it, relatives do it, you yourself do it, your friends do it. So I think we should stop comparing people, because understand that two people are not alike, not even twins, right? Not even monozygotic twins, even they are not alike. um, Mental capacity is different for everybody. Everybody's individual capability is very, very different. You you can't compare Sachin Tendulkar and Mr. Narendra Modi, right? Both are very, very, very different. Both are doing extremely well in their own field. You can't ask Modi ji to play cricket, and you can't ask Sachin Tendulkar to probably run the country. They may not be able to do it as well as in their own field. So easiest thing to do is when, please resist your temptation to fill a lot of competitive activities in your child's schedule. When you have Sundays, you send them for swimming, you send them for some competitive field. And also, instead of like teaching them to revel in one particular area, teach them to try out everything. So when I was a child, I was made to try out everything. I was made to try out cricket, art, craft, different things. And I picked up art. Like I also do art as my second whatever, other than being a doctor. Um, had they not asked me to go to art and only played cricket, probably I would have sucked at it, right? So balance out competitive activities with non-competitive activities, with non-goal oriented. Not everything is about a goal. Sometimes you just have to do things for fun, and sometimes you just have to do nothing. So teach kids all this, and teach kids about what it means to be a failure, and it is okay, because we associate failure as a very big word. A lot of people even end their life the moment when they think that they're going to be in that particular category. So I think we should start teaching since the childhood itself, and understand we have so many esteemed panelists sitting here, and you don't know how much I scored in my MBBS. You don't know how much I scored in my MD. You probably will never know. Even I don't remember what's my percentage was. So, so don't try to focus on being the best in a class. Just try to be your best version. As cliche as it sounds, I think you should really try to compete with your own self and see if you're progressing or regressing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Charan. That was a very succinct answer, and I very well agree to the fact that uh, rather than competing with anyone else around, what we should be try to be is a better version of our own self. How we have improved the way we were yesterday as compared to what we are today. So, with this, I hand over the mic to my fellow moderator, Ruchita, for the next question.
Good morning, everybody, and very excited to be here all the way from London. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about a phase that most of us will either go through or be with people who are going through. Talk about pregnancy and exercise during pregnancy. So I have friends who have lifted 50 kilos till a day before they've gone into labor. And then there's myself. I vegetated, ate, and cried all throughout my two pregnancies. But probably yoga is the middle ground for it. So my question is for Shraddha. what's the importance of yoga during this really critical phase of a woman's life?
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the. So, I can't stress on the importance of yoga during pregnancy. I would like to start with the stress factor that everyone goes through pregnancy. Obviously, it's a new phase in a woman's life, and it's something which is very it's a stressful time. The cortisol levels during in the body that time are going higher and higher, and you don't know what you're going to do. It's a new human that you're going to build and come into your life. It's going to be it's a very mindfully, it's a really stressful time. So with yoga, with the breathing mechanisms that the yoga provides, the asana practice, you can feel a little bit more relaxed. So it will help in reducing the cortisol levels in the body. Second, when I come to the physical part of it, during pregnancy, we are going through a lot of physical changes in the body. You experience fatigue, you experience a lot of tiredness, you experience a lot of back pain because your belly size is increasing, you experience a lot of joint pains and everything. So with the asana practice during pregnancy, all of this can reduce, and I have seen it. I've seen it with my own experience, the number of people that I've taught during pregnancy, as opposed to people who have not done anything during pregnancy. Their pregnancy is smoother, and let's not forget about the postpartum as well. It's much easier, the recovery time as well. Third, yoga also, of course, has a large part in meditation. So, we are trying to connect with a human, you're trying to connect with your baby. It's a new thing. It's a new phase in your life. So, yoga will also help in doing a lot of baby connection with the mother, the parent, both, I guess, but especially with the mother. It's a lot about the baby connection meditation that you do during that time. Also, let's not forget about a large part of the percentage nowadays, let's say about 48% in the private hospitals go through C-section. And I really want to stress about the fact, and being a childbirth educator also in right now, I definitely tell them about what is the importance of vaginal birth. How we can do it. So with yoga, it also helps in strengthening the pelvic floor muscle, opening the hip joint, which is required for natural birth. It's easy to go for C-section, and it's easy for hospitals to say, okay, this is what's happening to the baby, let's go for the C-section because it's faster, it's quicker. But I would tell them, I educate them with yoga to be aware of your own body, be aware of how you are feeling, not just listen to an external person. Yes, sometimes it's important, sometimes it's medically really important to go for C-section. However, it's important to ask questions. It's important to say that, no, I am ready. I can maybe meditate during that time, be more present in the now rather than being scared of the future and what can happen to your body and the baby. Just having that connection during that time is very important. So I think with all of these factors, I think during pregnancy, it's very crucial to be involved with yoga, I think.
That is very interesting, Shraddha. So I gave birth in the UK, and there they really stress on vaginal birth. But I had like a 40-hour labor, 50-hour labor. And by the end of it, the doctor comes to me and he says, it's a really difficult thing I have to tell you, Rashida, but I think we have to go down for the C-section.
Okay.
And he was so upset that he was giving me this bad news, and I was like, yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, different experiences, but
Yes.
clearly yoga is very important.
Absolutely.
Okay, now changing gears a little bit and moving on to Haiti. So Haiti, the two things that I want to talk about, one is stress and the other is competition. So I work in the corporate in London, highly competitive. But the thing that we say to ourselves is nobody's dying. But I think there are a lot of people in this room who work in work environments where if they make a mistake, something unfortunate might happen. So the stress levels would be very high. The point is that competition and stress are therefore two very big parts of our lives these days. Are there any teachings in the Bhagavad Gita or the manuscripts that you read and study which can help us navigate these two problems?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. So it's actually interesting what you spoke at first, very much on the same thing, actually very aligned with the Bhagavad Gita, what you were saying about defining success, because often in this competitive world, we really become afraid of failure because we really want to succeed, right? So then, in this fear of failure, what helps is exactly what you were saying, redefining what that success means. And according to Bhagavad Gita, actually that success is not in the results. Is if we have wrong understanding of the success, we have wrong understanding of the failure as well. So the success instead is in endeavor, in the efforts we put in our intention. And then actually Bhagavad Gita also teaches about action without getting attached to the results. So actually there is a higher controller. We are not the controllers here. And there are aspects in the universe that also play a role in this. So like you mentioned also similarly about this building a character. So actually that process of building that character through that endeavor, effort, intention, that's where the success lies. Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita teaches. So we should cultivate these qualities of becoming exemplary in our character, and that itself will eventually bring long-term results. And same as I mentioned about this not being controllers, there is this higher power that controls. And one big thing that the Bhagavad Gita, like my take on the Bhagavad Gita is more through this, its relevance in today's world. Even it's spoken thousands of years ago, still the message that Krishna spoke to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it's very relevant today on the battlefield of modern challenges. And through this practical application, so anyone can benefit from the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. The message is very universal, it's not a religious book. And through this relatability. So one thing that Bhagavad Gita emphasizes is developing this mood of being of service. So actually when we are building that character and working towards that mood of being of service to others, collaborating. So similarly as you mentioned, that instead of kind of comparison and competition that creates a lot of that stress that we deal with, like you asked. So instead of that, when we contribute through the mood of service, so that changes everything, and that helps in kind of redefining that vision we have of success and failure as well.
That was very beautifully said. Thank you, Hedi. Mayank, now for you.
Thank you, Heidi. I don't have a single question, ma'am, for you. It's kind of a mixed bag. And the elements of the bag include the thought process of the youth today. What do you think, how the way the youth thinks about certain aspects of life, for example, relationships, how would you bring out the struggles that they go through as far as their mental thought process is concerned, as well as your comment on resilience for youth who are staying away from home in hostels. So these two things.
Thank you, Ming. So being a accidental new director principal of a very new medical college, which received 2 batches, and with my background of being a pediatrician, this was the other spectrum of pediatrics which I was looking at for the last 2 years. So I've been very closely observing my youth who joined just when they crossed their 18 years. In our colleges, the youth are coming at 18 years, unlike US and other countries where they come another after 3 years. So by the time they are coming, I realized that they are still kids. They have these 3 important characters which all teens and youth have. One is peer relationships, risk-taking, and novelty experiencing. These are the things for which they seek further experiences and their peer relationships. If it is a bunk in the class, it's all about peer relationships. It's about the peer pressures. It's about if somebody has gone astray, it's the loyalty which they had for a erring youth who had done something wrong. I had a police coming there and explaining, yes, we understand, but you got into trouble because of that loyalty. But that really characterizes our youth. So what we understand is that as adults, we are how we mold their prefrontal cortexes. That's what is not matured. Their executive functioning is not yet mature. So we need to understand them, their biological immaturity, why they are having. When Dr. Gandhi talked about developing the character, the first thing we tell them, we are moving from competitiveness to cooperativeness. When they're coming to hostels, what we expect them to be more cooperative, a community living, understanding how you will work over the next few years. So when we talk about resilience, it's the keystone habits. And many of them, just now, Dr. Srinivas said, I got up at 4 a.m. When he said he got up at 4 a.m., me too. Me too. One of the keystone habits, these are getting up early in the morning, making up your beds, not having that digital clutter. The rooms are clean. So all these small, small habits, which actually can have a ripple effect. So these are the things we need to cultivate when they're working in hostels, talking about cooperativeness, not toxic connections, and understanding and having a culture of inclusivity, cooperativeness, and celebrating each day, small or big experiences. My students are here. I was happy to get 25 of them. So this is the novelty. They could go to a pub, do anything, or they could have an experience which I'm sure they really enjoyed. So we are working to give them the prefrontal cortexes of our youth and work for them. And that's what will work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhavani. I really liked that idea of ignoring the competitiveness and increasing cooperation. That's really useful.
We can't tell any of our youth to correct unless we connect.
Oh, wow.
So we must connect to correct. That's important.
And I think as a mother, I will take note of that, because even with your own children, if you don't connect, you really can't correct them, especially youngsters. Bit of a handful. Anyway, moving on to our next panelist, which is Shweta. And I've been very excited to meet all our panelists, but especially Shweta, because I actually studied in school with her and I haven't seen her since class 12. So it's like a decade of not seeing her. It's very, very special to meet you, Shweta, here. So I travel a lot. Whichever part of the world I go to, Shweta, in any resort, there is always a 6 a.m. yoga session where somebody comes and does namaste to me and teaches me yoga. So we talk about yoga diplomacy now, and the benefits of yoga and how it helps us internally, mentally, physically are well documented. My question to you is, how has yoga become an important tool for forging diplomatic relationships between countries?
Good morning, everyone. To be able to answer this question, we need to first understand what is soft power. So any discourse on international relation cannot be complete without discussing soft power. And we owe a lot of credit to a professor from Harvard who coined the term, his name was Joseph Nye, and he coined the term soft power, which basically means that it's not coercive power, or it's not power by inducement. It is something where the world is attracted to your cultural ethos. And it's not that the aspects of soft power were not there before, but India, under the current regime, has been significant in terms of exporting yoga as one of its most prominent cultural exports, and which has transcended boundary of language, culture across the world. We have today 125 million people practicing yoga, and one of the most important feature of soft diplomacy is the ability of an actor state to be influence other actor states to modify their behavior on a positive perception of the primary actor. And I think we have the testament of that success in the fact that the United Nations has recognized yoga as an international yoga day on 21st June, which is one of the biggest feathers for our diplomatic success, because in that sense we have really united the world without pushing it and falling into the trap of cultural imperialism. So I think at the moment, the inclusive nature and innate values of yoga, which embraces inclusivity. By our diplomacy, we have been able to embrace that through the number of people who are now practicing.
Thank you, Shweta, for that. And Dr. Mayank?
Hare Krishna Das ji, good morning. The next question is for you. In today's young generation, whether they are working or studying, they face a lot of distractions, and yet they are needed to, focus their attention and divide it in multiple places and tasks. And they have to manage all the tasks at one at the same time. So that also creates a lot of stress and anxiety, handling a number of multitasking while trying to focus to bring out the best. So is there a way to seek relief and help through mantra chanting technique?
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you for the very relevant question for the youth. This is a Youth 20 summit or consultation. So, I remember as a young boy, that's when, I got connected with this spiritual path when I was just a 16-year-old boy. And, going through all that academic pressures of studying and focusing on different aspects, including the physical activity also. Nowadays, not much is happening there, because most of the sports are here, unfortunately. So, I remember that, yes, it's a fact that, so many things have to be taken care of and mind is in so many different places. So as soon as we speak of attention, then it necessarily, we have to understand that it's the mind, right? And, our topic is yoga and mental health. So we also have to understand what is this mind and the mind mechanism. So, mind is defined in different ways. I was just searching, what does the Wikipedia say? Wikipedia says mind is, the different mental faculties, what we do with different mental faculties. So it's like, mind is what the mind does. That's not very clear definition. But if we actually see in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 15th chapter, Sri Krishna, when he's speaking to Arjun, he says that all of us, all the living entities who all are here, including me, we all essentially are spiritual beings. And we are covered over, our identity is covered over by these different layers. If you remember the yesterday's talk, there were these 5 layers which were being spoken about, the Annamaya Kosh, Pranamaya Kosh, like that. So, in a very simplified way, he says that, the 5 senses and the 6th one is the mind. So, mind is identified as one of the senses, but it is a subtle sense. 5 gross senses we all know, eyes, ears, everything like that. And the Katha Upanishad, it gives an example that how do we understand ourselves. It gives the example of a chariot, that this body is like a chariot, the 5 senses are like the horses, the driver of the chariot is the intelligence, and the horses and the driver, they are connected with a rein, the ropes of mind. And the passenger is the you, the self, the soul. So we come to this that, there are these 3 things. One is the body, the mind, and the self. So body of the senses. So if we take the example of this mobile, because this is something that we all have, right? And we all relate so much to it. This body, the mobile gadget is the body, the hardware. And the iOS or the operating system is the mind, the software. And we supposed to be the smart guy, is the soul, the user, right? So this, we call it as smartphone, but actually it's we who should be smart really. So, this, imagine a very nice gadget, but the software is corrupted. Will it function? It won't function. So, we all are given, most of us, naturally a very healthy body, at the time of birth, unless there is something that really happens during the pregnancy and delivery. So, but how do we train, program, condition our mind accordingly? Even the body doesn't function. So, in my youth days, when I got connected, I learned this, that it is very important to invest in taking care of the mind. And, it's a very common example that we have heard probably many times, that, there is a carpenter, or we have also seen a carpenter, when he starts working on his furniture making, the first thing that they do is sharpen their tools. And once the tools are sharpened, then the work throughout the day goes on very smoothly. So, the mind is that faculty which actually helps us to remain focused. And if we give sufficient time to the mind, then, all other functions can go on very smoothly. So, I have personally experienced during my student times that when I started chanting the mantra, many of my other student friends, they would say, "Kya time pass? Why are you wasting time?" But I realized it is not wasting time, it is investing time in focusing the mind. The mantra, what it does is, it's like this magnifying glass. You have the sun rays, which has the power. But when you have the magnifying glass, what happens is all that energy is focused in one place. Then it is as good as sun, it can burn. So the mantra chanting, when we start chanting the mantra, what we do is we are just focusing on the sound vibration. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that mind will actually run here and there. But he advises, yato yato nischalati manaschanchalam asthiram tatas tato niyamyaitat. So wherever the mind wanders, bring it back. And how do we bring it back? By sound. See, we connect with sound always. So this sound vibration, when it is chanted, it actually helps to bring the mind in one place. And once we have sufficiently trained the mind, then we can take care of so many things. If the mind is organized, then our lives can also become organized. But if the mind is everywhere, then we can't really focus. Now there is this, very a new term, continuous partial attention. Right? So we are not focusing on one thing, and that is because of this, that, once in a while we are hearing, now it may be happening with few of us, we are hearing and we are thinking we are attentive, but then mind is here. So when we chant the mantra practice actually helps us to focus. So that's, unless you practice it, you won't realize it. So.
Thank you, Hare Krishna Das ji. That was very nicely summarized. So the bottom line is, we need to start working on our minds at as soon and early age as possible. We go to the next question, which I put up to Dr. Charan. Dr. Charan, what is your take on sex education in the Indian youth, and when should it begin in school, and how should it be addressed at home? So if you could briefly summarize.
I'm going to give a shocking answer of sex education should begin at the age of maybe 3 or 4, where we're teaching about good touch and bad touch, right? So sex education, a lot of parents think that they're going to teach about how to have sex. That's not what it's going to be taught. It's going to have various aspects to it. We're going to teach about menstruation. We're going to teach about body positivity, body image, body parts, reproductive system, nocturnal emission, ejaculations, erections, different aspects to it. Consent, sexual violence, cyber sexual violence, different aspects. I mean, I think I'm missing out on many more things. So I think we shouldn't give an option for the parents to opt out or opt in their kids for sex education, if at all there is enrollment of sex education in any of the school, because I go as a sex educator to a couple of international schools in Hyderabad, but that's about international schools. What about the government schools? What about the other private organizations? There is no sex education at all. And if you think that you are sitting in the dark and closing your eyes and everything is dark, that's not going to happen. Your kid probably knows a lot about sex from different sources which are not very healthy. The most popular thing is your internet, right? Popularly, mostly you're not getting adequate, proper information about sex. Also, may they get the information from their friends or older cousins. None of these are reliable sources, and the perfect source is you yourself to start from at home. Start teaching about menstruation as the most basic thing for women, and about nocturnal ejaculation or erections to boys, because these are two areas where people really get uncomfortable with their own body. Firstly, puberty is I think it's a very strange phase for a lot of youngsters, right? Your body changes, your mind changes, you're not prepared for it. The pandemic, if you were prepared for it, it wouldn't have been as distressful, right? None of us were prepared for it. We never saw it coming. So it was very difficult to deal with. So same way, if you're not prepared for your body and mind to change, you're not going to take it well. So it's always good to prepare kids for puberty and what is required. And also another important aspect is sexuality here. Even that is taught in the sex education. Yeah, I think it should start as early as 4 about good touch and bad touch, and it should continue forward.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Charan, for that. Shraddha, coming back to you now, a very quick question here for you is, let's talk about some misconceptions that surround yoga and mental health. What are they, and how can we work to dispel them?
Do we have 30 minutes for me? I'm just going to talk about.
You got 30 seconds.
I'm joking.
Start, finish.
Okay. So many misconceptions though, but I'm going to start with the number one that I hear, and I'm going to only talk about it right now from the asana point of view, because that's where usually people like youth would associate yoga with is I can't do yoga because I can't touch my toes. That's just one thing that I keep hearing again and again, that I can't do classes with you, Shraddha. Sorry, I can't even touch my toes. I'm not flexible enough. I mean, to my answer to that is, it's not like when you start running or doing strength training, you can lift 20 kgs in the start. You have to start somewhere. It's always from the foundation. It's always from the base. So this is one of the very big misconceptions that I hear of a lot. Second, I keep hearing about how yoga is, well, it's for older people. That's one thing that I keep hearing a lot, and I want to specify it to the youth here. It's not just for older people. You have to start, as he also said, as young as like from the school. You have to start from the age of like 4 or 5. Yes, you may not have the focus at that point of time, but that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build that. So that's it's not just for older people. You have to start from as young as possible. And I keep stressing about the fact that how it should be an important subject in schools. It's just should be there as a mandate in each and every school from the start. Also, I hear a lot about it's just yoga is very boring, right? Like it's just so boring.
It's
I
not
don't know
Zumba.
what.
It's not Zumba, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not Zumba. You're not dancing. You're not like, it's not like, okay, high energy. What is it? What are you getting out of it? I think because we're trying to target different kinds of youth these days, yoga in terms of asana perspective can be tweaked in many ways. It can be a lot more about different kind of movements. It doesn't have to be a slow restorative form of yoga. There are different kinds of yoga forms which you can adopt to. Yin yoga, hatha yoga, ashtanga yoga. There's so many different kinds, and you have to see what works for you. Yoga is yoga by the end of the day, on the mat, off the mat, and once you get to whichever channel that you want to get to, hatha, ashtanga, anything, you will get into the different aspects of yoga, like we were discussing outside, that it's asana is just the starting point for many people, and then you move to the dhyana, pranayama, all the different layers that everyone was talking about here. Yeah, so these are, I think, some of the main misconceptions that I keep hearing about. And also one big one, that yoga is just for women. It's not just for women. It's really not. It's for all the genders. All the genders are welcome. Men should try it. I have, unfortunately, when I go and I teach here and there, and I teach in many places, I have mostly women, and I really want to urge that men, you have to get more into the yogic practices also.
Just out of curiosity, Shraddha, thank you. And just following on from what you said, out of curiosity, how many people here actually do yoga? Show of hands, please. I do it as well. Okay. Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you, Shraddha, for that, and thank you to the audience for the show of hands. Hedi, very quickly moving on to you, and shifting gears to depression now. It seems when we read the numbers, they're very scary. Every bracket of life, so youngsters and older people, younger people, everybody seems to be inching towards depression. The numbers are increasing, especially in the youth, which is very worrying. So much so that depression can sometimes lead to suicide when the world seems completely bleak to that particular individual. My question to you is that when the world is entirely bleak for that individual, can spirituality be that little beam of light that tears the darkness? Can spirituality be the answer for that problem?
Thank you for the question. And I would like to start by sharing my own experience, actually, which can be very relatable to many in the youth. Because when I was in my 20s, 20 years ago, studying, working, combining all that, so actually I went through severe clinical depression. And it took like many years out of my life. I quit my studies, my work, everything for some time. And I fully isolated from the world. And really kind of lost that vision that happens when we get depression. When we get depressed, we kind of become caged within that reality, you know. So we start to believe that this reality is what it's all about. We cannot see any further. And we start to identify so much with that reality as well, like I did. I am this depression, and there's no way out, you know. So how spirituality helped me? Actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, we can understand that we are not these bodies, we are not these minds, we are spirit souls. And all these thoughts coming from the mind, everything, all of this is temporary by nature. So also through that understanding that this depression also is temporary by nature. Actually, I am not this depression, I'm something else.
So I have a question there, Hedi. So when you were going through this phase, and I'm sorry you went through it,
Thank you.
What took you towards spirituality? Because that can be a spiral that goes downwards. So what made you go towards spirituality? What pulled you towards spirituality?
Yeah, because for me, it's a good question. And for me, I think the reasons behind the depression were kind of like that, which often is there for many people, that actually we are lacking this higher sense of purpose, sense of belonging here. And actually, even it is from a spiritual point of view, we are on a temporary place here. We don't actually belong here. We are just visiting here on this temporary journey. And then this higher purpose, because this modern day culture, you know, we are lacking that goal. We might have some short-term goals and goals based on these temporary things and these temporary identities that we build here. But we are lacking that actual higher goal. And so I kind of felt like that, very much like a sense of, I don't belong here, what's my purpose? What am I here to do for, you know? That led to that depression. So then I really was inclined to read and seek knowledge. So through that knowledge, I kind of, in my depression, you know, initially, of course, you're not really able to even read or do anything. But then I started reading, and I started reading spiritual literature. And then through that, I came to these realizations that actually there is a way out, that there is some power that I have to kind of start realigning, redirecting, and just training my mind and utilizing it differently, which is the spiritual process Bhagavad Gita explains it is about. So then, through knowledge, then I started meditating, and meditation was the big thing that helped for me. But with this journey of depression, also when we understand we have some power in our hands, but then the knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita also teaches us that yet, like I mentioned before, we are not controllers. So actually there is a higher controller. So there comes this aspect of accepting some grace to enter into our lives as well. And through this understanding, maybe the third step, it's not just that, you know, then when we accept this, kind of come to a state that, okay, there's a higher plan, let it work through me somehow. But of course, it's easier said than done. And it doesn't mean that we step back and kind of step back from the action and don't do anything. But action is important, especially action without getting attached to those results, like I mentioned before. So kind of maybe these three things help me to understand this. But I think definitely, especially in today's world also, there's so much of this kind of shallow or toxic positivity. And people try to bypass, because often also when we are experiencing these problems on a material level in this material world, and then we read the spiritual literature like I did, and oh, there's some high spiritual ideal solution for this. But if we try to immediately jump there, so we might bypass many things. And then the scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita emphasize the need for, that we need a guide, someone to guide us through these books. Otherwise, you know, we might end up bypassing a lot. So that importance of teacher, someone to show me the way, someone who has actually, you know, walked the way and had those realizations themselves. And that's what guru means, actually, someone who guides us from the darkness to the light, like my journey from darkness of depression to the light. And really, like, this knowledge from the Bhagavad Gita transformed personally my life for me. So definitely there are many things we can get from there. And with this kind of toxic positivity also, because real happiness from spiritual perspective has spiritual substance. It has some substance. So how do we develop that substance? Again, we need to do some work so that we don't, because also if we bypass, we jump to some high spiritual ideal, we might not do that actual work with ourselves. We kind of start pretending that we are somewhere we are not yet, and start living according to that ideal that I'm supposed to be this, I'm practicing spirituality. But doing that actual work with the help of a competent teacher, and then with that, for that, like all the spiritual scriptures, like the Yoga Sutras as well, emphasize discipline as the beginning when we enter to the spiritual life, developing discipline. So actually, developing this substantial happiness from spiritual point of view requires discipline. So through discipline, we can then reach to the higher state of happiness as well.
And when you talk about toxic positivity, I think things like Instagram really play a big role in it. And this is what I would like to say to anybody young here in the audience, that all that you see on Instagram is not true. That's probably a very small part of that individual's life. Everybody is probably struggling, has their own challenges. So please do not just go by that positive, nice, happy picture that you see on Instagram. I mean, we hope everybody's happy, but the reality is, like you said, there is a lot of work that goes into any sustainable happiness inside you. Not an easy part. So thank you. I think that was very important point.
So in the last question, Swamiji raised his, flashed his phone twice or thrice. And my question to Professor Bhavneet, Madam, is regarding mobile phones only, because these means of technology are a very important part of today's modern lifestyle for everyone, be it the youth or anyone. So the question is, ma'am, how should today's youth make or maximize the use of technology to benefit their lives rather than, you know, cripple them with increasing smartphone usage or addiction?
For me, when we talk about the I generation, they're definitely better. All of us as parents have taken their help whenever we have caught. So if my take on addiction is, addiction in any form is going to be a problem, whether it is a mobile phone or whether it is substance abuse, in any form, it's a problem. But it is how you will leverage it to your advantage. For example, when we are talking about medical education, there is a theory of connectivism. We use these resources to connect, and we try and use them positively. When you're talking about all is not right with Instagram, all is not right about the stories which you're saying, it's about making them more realistic. In our country, only those who want to go for USMLE, they want 200 volunteering. But what I feel is every profession, every person must get involved in volunteering. That means right from beginning, so that they see the reality. That's what is important. It's not telling them not to use, it's telling them what to do. So what I feel, what works for me is 3 random acts of kindness. And if anybody watches you doing those random acts of kindness, is transformed, giving them good role models, helping them understand how to use phones. In fact, I had resistance to buy a phone initially, thought it is a status symbol. Gradually, we all realized during the COVID times, it's an inevitable part. And we all have really benefited. We've got worldwide people talking to us online. Wherever the cost was a constraint, we really used it. So I feel addiction in any form is a problem, but we should not just talk about mobile phone. Tell them the hazards of it, talk to them, be aware about cyber crimes. We are seeing them. So we have them, youth, talk to them, understanding the problems with the media. There is a social dilemma, a movie in Netflix, which is a good movie for anybody to understand what this world of social medicine, social problems are with the social media. So I think addiction to be handled as like anything. But one thing we talked about sexuality education, I felt there has to be one nurturant adult in any family, in every child's life, where he can discuss. So that's one thing. We don't take sex education, it's a comprehensive sexuality education where we talk about relationships, we talk about so many things. So here, you can be that nurturant adult for any child. That's what is required.
Thank you for that to the point and crisp response. As far as addiction is concerned, we had a wonderful question answer session with Jeeva Hammond yesterday. The positive aspects of everything have to be looked up to, and a nurturing person is the one who can take care of sexual problems, addiction problems, as well as technology problems that are being misused. So the nurse.
Okay, so thank you for that. I think we're going to take a bit of a detour now and go to the audience for any questions that they might have for our panelists, because Mayank and I have had a chance to ask our questions, but we don't want to hog them entirely and give you guys a chance. So anybody has a question for anybody on the panel, please let us know now. There's somebody there, a lady in the purple shirt, please. Is there a mic anywhere for her?
Hey everyone, my question is for Dr. Charan and Shraddha ma'am. That right now Bhavneet ma'am highlighted the issues associated with addiction. So how can yoga help in addiction, in prevention of addiction and addiction relapse?
The question was for who, please?
Dr. Charan and Shraddha ma'am.
Dr. Charan.
See, I'm not very specific. I can't specifically answer your question about how yoga helps with addiction, but understand that, if you take out time to do any other activity but just be scrolling on your, on your social media, that is helpful in itself for you to break out and have a routine for yourself. Let's just say that, I'm somebody who is practicing yoga or any exercise for that matter every day for like probably 1.5 hours of my day. So that's 1.5 hours less of us scrolling through our social media, isn't it? When we had nothing to do in the pandemic, all we did was scroll through the numbers and different things. But if you fix a routine that also includes yoga, it will really help. But yoga definitely helps with like lot of substance use disorders. When you do yoga, it's all about your oxygen, metabolism, and blood supply, how it reaches certain areas of the brain. If you're a medical student, you have cortex and subcortex, right? Subcortex is involved with a lot of psychiatric conditions. including substance use disorders and prefrontal cortex and amygdala, hippocampus. There are different areas, right? So yoga helps with all of them. So in a way, it does help. Exactly how, I can't answer. Yeah, but it definitely does.
Okay,
Adding
can
a
I?
little.
Yeah, I have two questions. Okay, I prepared a lot. I thought I'll be also given opportunity to talk. Can yoga reduce weight? And can there be smartphone yoga? I think let's not be critical about this phone. The phone at the moment is in your hand. In 10 years' time, this phone will be out. The phone is going to become a wearable device that is going to be in front of your eyes with AR, VR, artificial intelligence. It will work like analyze your eye movements, even your thought process. And much beyond that, the Elon Musk is working on an interface where you will have a chips in your brain and you can be transformed into anything. It's all about our brain and the chemicals, our state of mind. And at the moment, what I preach is, what do you practice? You all must have seen that video. What do you practice? So what happens in our brain, those chemicals, they make us to do the things. And all this yoga, spirituality, meditation, pranayama, all those things, I think that does affect our state of mind and through the chemicals. So there's a lot of scientific things happening, and we all are here for enhancing the humanity. So all the practices, all the experiments, all the things happening on this earth by all these educated people. I'm really enthralled with the kind of discussion you guys are doing. So impressive, You are such experts in your field, I couldn't stop myself asking these two questions: whether there is yoga helps in weight reduction, and is there any phone yoga? I can crack a lot of jokes because I practice humor. When everybody's talking, my mind is always thinking about some kind of a humor. And today's humor is like, I was just going through, 80% of the women wear yoga pants, and none of them do the yoga. And 100% men, they really don't care. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are a little pressed on time, so I would like to request the chairpersons to conclude the session with their remarks. Professor Srinivas, sir.
A wonderful session, a lot of expertise. I think we need to carry home the messages which has been given by the experts over here. And especially it is true for the medical students, because Divine Land, the Divine Institute, a lot of medical students going through the stress, we carry home, the medical students and the doctors carry home the messages which has been given with respect to the stress and this use stress and the distress. That's what the distinction he made, And similarly, what she was talking about, the importance of the yoga, and then actions rather than the results, and then how do we cope up with the stress and all, and how to be smart, not to be enslaved by the smartphone. I think this is a message which we carry home. Wonderful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the chairpersons for the concluding remarks. And of course, thank you so much to our esteemed panel for taking the time out, traveling from different parts of the country and the world to be here and for sharing your wisdom with us. And thank you, of course, to the audience for being such a fantastic audience. And thank you, Mayank, for being such a wonderful co-moderator. So I'll hand over to Ravi now, who can now conclude the ceremony.
Thank you, honorable chairpersons and eminent panelists, for this insightful talk. I hope the session has been informative and interesting to all. Now I would like to request Honorable Chairpersons to felicitate the panelists and moderators with a memento. I request Professor M. Srinivas to felicitate Dr. Charan Teja. Thank you, sir. I again request Professor M. Srinivas to felicitate Ms. Shraddha Jain. I again request Professor M. Srinivas to felicitate Ms. Heidi Soka. Thank you, sir. I again request Professor M. Srinivas to felicitate Professor Bhavneet Bharti. Thank you, sir. Now I request Professor Ashok Puranik to felicitate IFS Sweta Bansal. Thank you, sir. I again request Professor Ashok Puranik to felicitate Shri Hare Krishna Das. Thank you, sir. I again request Professor Ashok Puranik to felicitate Ms. Ruchita Mishra. Thank you, sir. I request Professor Ashok Puranik again to felicitate Dr. Mayank Mishra. Thank you, sir. Now I request Professor Mukesh Tripathi, Director AIIMS Mangalagiri, accompanied by Dhavani, MBBS Batch 21, to felicitate Honorable Chairperson Professor M. Srinivas. Thank you, sir. Now I request Mr. Anmol Soni, Additional Professor in the Department of, Mr. Anmol Soni, accompanied by Sangeeta, MBBS Batch 21, to felicitate Honorable Chairperson Professor Ashok Puranik. Thank you, sir. Now I request all the dignitaries on the dais to rise for the group photo. I also request Professor Mukesh Tripathi and Mr. Anmol Soni, along with all the coordinators and volunteers of this panel, to join us on the stage for a group photo. Volunteers, please present the book Modi at 20 to our distinguished guests.
I would like to make a correction. We are having Mr. Anmol Soviji, who is the chair of the Y20 Secretariat, and we welcome sir to the program today.
Thank you all for participating in this panel discussion and making it a success. Best honorable chairpersons, panelists to proceed to the media room for media bite. In the end, now we are proceeding for the inaugural session. I request the audience to please be seated. Thank you.